Morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out so early on a Friday morning. My name is Bill Lange, and I'm going to be giving a talk on maintenance and repair of your Atari home computers. You can really use this for any of your home computer collection. So I'm basically going to go over some of the repairs that I've done this year, basically following what's been coming out and fixing the hardware that I have. So who am I? Bill Lange. I'm a software engineer at XIII, and I got my first Atari computer in about 1982 in a consumer store in Toms River, and I've been collecting ever since. So got a big basement full of Atari computers. So I'm not going to talk about building your collection. If you want to hear more about building a collection, you can go see Dean's talk at 3:20. So he's going to be giving a general talk on building your collection, the space you need, the money, how you get your wife to buy into it, and those kinds of things. Also, I will not be covering monitors because Ian is going to have a session on monitor repairing at 11:50. So maybe that's the talk after this, or I'm not sure. But he goes into breaking down a monitor, repairing it, pulling out the capacitors, things like that. So how many of you guys remember these days when you could go into Toys R Us and they had everything you could possibly want? Those were good days. Being a kid going in there, everything. You had no money, but they had all the stuff you wanted. You get it home, you get your 815 dual disk drive, your monitor, your printer, your computer, your interface unit. You had it all set up to go. And then time marches on. We moved on to PCs, to Macs, to Linux boxes, and most of this stuff got put away. Hopefully, it didn't get thrown away. It didn't get put in the humid attic. You put it away and you put it in some good boxes. So what I will talk about is basically, I'll start talking about how to store your collection, and then doing maintenance on the pieces that have broke down over time. I'm not really going to talk about electrical fixes. More of the problems that I've had with my collection over time is plastic that cracks on like printers and things like that. There's gears and things that have cracked over time, or on other pieces of equipment, the rubber breaks down and turns into black goo over 35 years. So I'll talk about some of those things and how to replace some of those parts. Some of the parts, you just got to find what you can to make it work. So this is my collection in my basement. So I have some homemade shelving. So you want to try to keep your collection organized, because the best way to keep your stuff and break it down is to keep it protected and keep it organized, right? So I have some shelves. I have a lot of plastic boxes. Everything has dust covers on it where I can. And I'll show you where you can buy some of these things as well. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and let me know. I try to keep my hardware out of the boxes because I don't want to create additional shelfware on the boxes. So I'll take the computers and the printers out and I'll put them in these plastic containers. That way I can easily pull them out and work on them and do exhibits and things like that. Let's see, what else? Shelving, boxes, storage containers, and dust covers. These dust covers right here, these will cover 13-inch monitors. These are all the Commodore 1702s, and I also have some Amdec monitors. You can get these dust covers on Amazon. They still make them. You can still get them. So, as collectors, people who collect anything, action figures, computers, keeps this company in business. I mean, you go to Target and Walmart and buy all different sizes of these containers. I basically use 3 different sizes. I use the 28-quart boxes for consoles, Atari 2600s, the computers, printers, whatever will fit in those boxes. I have some Commodore computers, some Apple computers in there as well. Disk drives, tape drives, smaller printers will fit in these 16-quart boxes. And then I also have smaller boxes, shoebox size, where I put additional parts and pieces. So that's how I keep my collection organized. I keep it from breaking. I just keep it organized in these boxes on shelves. As I mentioned, dust covers. This is the place for Atari computers. Has anybody bought anything from Best Electronics out in San Jose, California? So there's pretty much 3 companies right now that still have new old stock Atari products 35 years later. The 2 biggest ones are out in California, one in San Jose and one up in the mountains there. When Atari was going out of business in the mid to late 90s, these 2 guys went and bought up warehouses full of stuff. And they have the stuff in their house or in their warehouses. They got more parts than they could possibly sell in their lifetime, because they have millions of parts and there's hundreds of us collecting it around the world, right? There's not that many people collecting this stuff. So you can still go to Best Electronics, get ICs, get cabling. They even come out with new stuff, and I'll cover some of that as well. So at Best they have, you can get dust covers for your Atari consoles, computers. Let's see. And as I mentioned, at Amazon you can get these computer dust solutions. So whenever I have something out on the bench, I usually keep it covered, because there's dust around, there's ambient light coming in from the windows. You want to protect the color of the plastic, because the sun's going to break down the plastic. And just keep it dust-free and clean. It should last a long time. It's amazing that they could last 35 years already. And as I mentioned, these dust covers, they work on the Commodore 1702 monitors. I have a few small 13-inch color TVs they cover, and also the AMDEC Color 1 monitor. So these are great little dust covers if you're looking for a solution. So Atari is known for their cartridges, right? So I'm not a big cartridge collector. There's better solutions these days than having stuff on cartridge. Actually, one cartridge with everything on it, right? So, but when you buy stuff from other people, when you buy a big lot of stuff, you usually get a bunch of cartridges. You get 10 Pac-Man cartridges, a couple basic cartridges, and you end up with all these cartridges. So what I do, I have these baseball card boxes that you can get on Amazon, and I have, say, 10 basic cartridges. I'll take 9 of those cartridges and wrap them in these baseball card team bags, because I'm never going to use them. I only need 1 cartridge. If I have duplicates, I clean them and I wrap them, and they just stay like that. I sent, anybody listen to the Antic podcast here? So I sent Brad in Atlanta some cartridges one time for VCF East, and he nicknamed these cartridge condoms because of the way they look. So baseball card boxes, wraps, keeps your cartridge protected, keep the dust out. Again, both are available on Amazon. Retrobrighting. Has anybody tried retrobrighting here? Okay, so the plastic that made up the computers in the 80s is fairly cheap plastic. And over time, specifically if it's in sunlight, it'll break down the chemicals in the plastic and it'll get discolored like this. So there's a couple of ways that you can fix this and make it shiny and new again. One way is a retrobrighting, which is you take a tub and you mix in hydrogen peroxide, which you get from, this is the industrial stuff that you go to a beauty parlor supply store and you buy it by the gallon. You pour it in the jug, you add some OxyClean, and then you can either, you get it covered with that liquid, just the plastic. So you take the computer apart, and just put the plastic in there, you soak it in that liquid, and then you can either put it out in the sun for a few hours, or you can get a UV lamp and let the sun hit, the light hit it that way, and that will bleach out this discoloration and get a nice shiny new computer again. So if you guys want to try to make some chemicals in your house, this is a good project to work on. Let's see, what else? So I mentioned that Best Electronics out in California has a warehouse full of Atari stuff. The guy doesn't even know what he has. And his website's awful. It's like from 1982. So you can't even find what you're looking for. But what he does, he finds what parts are breaking down, And he actually goes out and has new parts made. And so he created this new circuit board for Atari joysticks. So these joysticks right here are a very classic, iconic joystick. They break down a couple of ways. First, these little buttons break down. They get flattened out, and so the joystick doesn't work. So he came up with these new gold circuit boards. You just take your joystick apart, you put one of these in and rewire it up. When I open the joystick, I usually take a quick photo of how the wires are connected, and then I'll just go and swap it out and put this in. Then the joystick will work great. You can get that really good tactile feel to it. Another thing that breaks down these joysticks is on the very bottom, there's these rubber feet. And those are one of those things that over 30, 35 years just turns to goo. And so basically you have to scrape it off and replace it with something. So you can either get new plastic feet or rubber feet from Best Electronics, or you could just go to Home Depot or whatever and just get these clear ones, and these will fit as well. So as I mentioned, these it just turns, a lot of parts just turn to goo, and this is one of the biggest ones. You'll have it in your hand, and you get this gooey stuff all over your hand. So it's better just to clean it off. You can use Gooby Gone to break it down some more, get it really clean, and then just replace it with new feet. As I mentioned, you can get the original black ones from Best Electronics, and you can get clear ones at Home Depot or Target. So this is the iconic joystick. This joystick here is the one that Atari released with I believe the XIII, and these are really hard to find. The gray ones that match the XE computers and the XIII. It's not. I wouldn't really use it that much because it is spray paint. It's gonna get nicked and come off. It's not built into the plastic. But this is a good way to create an exhibit that looks really nice. So here's a couple of different spray paints that you can use on these joysticks. And are these presentations going to be made available after somewhere online?
Yes.
Okay, so you can either write these down if you're interested, or you can get it from the Vintage Computer Festival website after the event. What else? So program recorders. These are the things that you would put the cassette in, type in C load, hit enter, and 10 minutes later, maybe your game will load. These guys break down for two reasons. They have these rubber belts inside them, these drive belts, and either they just decay, the rubber in the belts just breaks down over time, and they're not the right length anymore, and so the speed's not correct, so the computer can't read the cassette. The other thing with these belts, if you replace one of these belts on one of these machines and it's working great, and then you put it on the shelf for a year or two and you don't touch it again, the belt's going to get a little kink in it where the rollers are touching the belt, and the belt's going to get out of alignment, and every time that belt goes around there's going to be a bubble in it, and it's going to, again, break the speed of the tape drive, and the computer's not going to be able to use it. So only repair these if you're actually planning on using it for something, because the belt, if you don't use it for a year or two, it's going to stop working again. But you can get these belts. They're available on eBay. I'm not sure if Best Electronics has it. If they do, they're probably new old stock, which is not very helpful. It's still going to be broken down. So you can get brand new ones on eBay they're not that much, a couple bucks.
So Bill, is it the lack of use that causes it, or is it just pure age?
So two things. So both because the rubber in the belts, the chemicals in the rubber breaks down, just like all the plastics. The plastic's cracked, the rubber, the chemicals in it, just the bonds and the chemicals break apart over time, and it just becomes goo. It's just not a belt anymore. So that's over time. But the lack of use, if you have this sitting on your shelf with the belt installed, there's tension on the belt, on the rollers, and the rollers is causing the belt to get warped, basically. And so every time the belt now goes around, there's going to be a little warp in the belt, and so the timing is going to be off every time that belt goes around. And these things didn't work that great when they were brand new. If you have a little gap in that belt, it's just going to get error every time you spend an hour trying to load your game. Let's see, what else? So one of the big issues, I have it with my Atari computers and with my my Apple IIc, is the keyboards break down. So the Atari 1200 XL was a short-lived computer, but it was known for having one of the nicest keyboards in the Atari line. And what happens with that keyboard over time, it has this this piece of mylar in here, which has got circuits in it and it's plastic. These circuits, specifically down here really, it peels apart and breaks, and then the keyboard stops working. So you'll have a really nice looking machine, but you can't do anything with it because the keyboard's just not working. So Best Electronics, kind of like a commercial for Best Electronics, but really it's the only place you can get new stuff. So the guy at Best Electronics, he had new Mylars made, so brand new. These are just manufactured. You can take the one out, take this apart, take the one out of the keyboard, replace it with a brand new Mylar. It's got a great connection down here, and then your computer will start working great again. And I get the same kind of mushy feeling in the Apple IIc, and I haven't really found a replacement for that keyboard yet. Let's see what's next. In the XE series keyboard, so the Ataris had the exact same computer, and they released it like 5 different times. So they had the 400, 800 in the late 70s, the XL series in the early 80s, the XE series in the mid 80s. These keyboards had a really, really mushy feeling when you used them compared to previous ones. And again, Best Electronics came out with these little rubber silicone contacts. So in addition to replacing the Mylar in this guy, you take the keyboard apart and you take out these 56 little rubber boots that are in here. I'm not sure how, there's a lot. You get a whole package full of these. You take these clear ones out, and you just toss them and you put these new ones in, and these silicone contacts are much more stiff, and so when you get the keyboard put back together, it's got a really nice feel to it. So you can really upgrade the keyboard on the XE series by replacing the Mylar with a new Mylar and replacing these silicone contacts. Alright, so let me talk about this thermal printer here. Actually, let's see. Alright, so this thermal printer right here came out late, maybe 79 when the Atari computers came out. And it's basically a 40-column printer. It uses a special head on the printer, a special paper. The head heats up and it basically scores the paper and leaves the printing on it. The nice thing about this printer is it's whisper quiet. So like if you were running a BBS back in the 80s, if you use this printer, you could sleep right next to your BBS because it didn't make any noise whatsoever. The problem is, other than the capacitors inside breaking down, there's the roller that rolls the paper through is connected to the gears with a little piece of plastic. Well, that piece of plastic it was pretty cheap, and over 40 years now, it cracks. And so when you try to print something, it prints, but it prints on one line because the gears can't turn the roller anymore. So what's been found is you can go to Home Depot or wherever and get this little piece of plumbing pipe that maybe you use in your fish tank or whatever you use it for, and it's got enough resistance in it that you can remove that cracked piece of plastic, take a little piece of this, maybe an inch or two, and slide it in between the gears and the roller, and it's got enough grip to make it roll the paper through. And so you can get your 822 printer that hasn't been working in 20 years, you can get it working again with a couple dollar piece of plastic vinyl tubing. So in this printer, it's the plastic coupler that splits, but there's also the power supply in this printer is built inside, so there's some capacitors that you can remove too and replace with new capacitors, because we all know that the electrolytic capacitors dry out over time and stop working. So Atari didn't actually make this printer. This is a, this is a Tradecom thermal printer, and Atari just slapped their logo on it and their paint color. Many other computers did the same thing. Instead of making their own, they would just rebrand existing printers. So that's how you can fix this printer if you have one. They're pretty rare these days. They might show up on eBay once every other year. They're pretty hard to find. All right, so this is something I've been working on recently. This is the Atari 1020 color printer plotter. This thing is about this big. Anybody got one in here? So they came out, they were maybe a couple $100. Within a few months, they were down to like $10. They were giving them away, basically. You buy something, here's a printer. They use little tiny pens, so it uses 4 pens, usually black and 3 different colors, or you can put 4 blacks or whatever. It's like those pens we had in school in the 80s where you click the color and it changes the color and you can write. It uses those exact same pens, kind of, but they're about an inch big. So the problem with this printer, first is finding pens. So there's a couple of ways you can get pens for this printer. Best Electronics has the black pens. There's a company in Germany that makes brand new pens because these kind of mechanisms, it's called that ALPS mechanism. It's a company in Japan that made these, and there was maybe 10 different computer companies that released plotters using the mechanism inside this box. So Radio Shack had one, Commodore had one, Atari has one, and there's multiple other ones. But they all use the same mechanism, they just have a different outer box. But these mechanisms, they're still used today in various applications, Geiger counters or tracking earthquakes, or in the healthcare industry when they're EKG kind of things. So the pens are still made. You can buy them from a company in Germany, but they're really expensive. They're like, these should be like $1, right? And so I think the company in Germany sells them for like $15 plus shipping. So I guess it's all relative. If you want to get your plotter up and running, you need them to get them from somewhere. So there's a couple different places to get those plotter pens. Once you get the plotter pens, the other problem is inside the mechanism, there's 2 little plastic gears called the X and Y gears. So I have some replacements right here. I don't even know if you can see them. They're super tiny, and they're tiny in this package, and when you get them, you actually have to cut them with an X-Acto knife to break them apart, because I think they're 3D printed. And these are super cheap. They're a couple dollars for the 3. So here you can see a better picture. They come connected like this. You just cut it with an X-Acto knife. You only need 2 of them for the... I only replaced 2. I can only find 2 in mine, and once I replaced them, it worked fine. So basically, you remove the 3 screws from the bottom of your printer. There's rubber feet on the bottom of the printer as well. You got to peel 2 of those off to get to the other 2 screws. You pull the case apart. These gears are just on a piece of metal, so there's a little tension. You just kind of slide them off with your hands. As I said, you cut these with a knife, and you slide them back on. They're tiny. They're really easy to lose. They like to jump off the table. You got to find them. The cat kicks them. But once you get it all back together, this is where you get them right here. Shapeway.com, and there's a URL here. And so this is what it looks like after I replaced it. So this is, I got a driver disc to run Print Shop. Everybody familiar with the Print Shop? So I got a driver disc to run the Print Shop on my little plotter. Which, there's no reason to ever do this except that it exists, right? I mean, why? It's crazy. So you just choose a color. You can see the gears are now working. This took about 25 minutes. It's sped up 64 times. I don't want to use up all the time. But there you go. So, $5 in parts and maybe 20 minutes in work. You have your color plotter working again. You can show that to all your friends and they'll be impressed if you have a 35-year-old color plotter working. Alright, so this is another thing I fixed this year. So this printer is the Atari 1027 letter quality printer. Does anybody have one of these? Alright, so these printers, They use a rubber belt. Let's call it a belt or whatever. It's just like those little stamps that you set the date, stick it in ink, and you stick it on a piece of paper. Everybody know what I'm talking about? It works exactly like that, except it's automatic. The gears turn the head to the right letters. The roller rolls over the letters, and it prints on the paper. It was super slow, super loud, but it did give, better quality print out of this little printer. The problem is, this print head was made out of rubber. And again, over time, the chemicals in the rubber would break down, the bonds would break apart, and you would end up with just a big glob of goo inside the printing mechanism. There's no head there anymore, it's just a big mess. In fact, Best Electronics had pallets of these, and he just threw them away because you couldn't get these anymore. And even though all the replacement parts turned to goo, and so they all got thrown away. So last year, I guess it was about a year in the making, somebody I think in Germany. So you either get stuff from Best Electronics in California or Eastern Europe is where all the stuff comes from. So somebody for a contest I think it was in Germany, spent a lot of time making this, 3D printing it, and making them available to people. So I ordered a couple, which is a good thing is they're not that expensive, it's the shipping, it's all relative really, but I ordered two. The first time I tried to put one on, I split it and I just threw it away because it's very, very thin rubber and it's grooved in between the letters and it's very easy to break. And the problem with this printer is when the print head would break down, it would all get stuck in the mechanisms. So I probably spent a good hour cleaning this on the inside before I tried to install it. I should have spent 2 hours. I should have just spent more time cleaning it and getting all those it really broke down. There's particles everywhere. You take it, and it even would stink. If you had it in a box and you open it up, you could smell the chemicals breaking down. It was really bad, and it took a long time to clean it. So I cleaned it, I installed the second head, just a couple of screws really. You take the cover off and there's a couple little screws and there's a little strip of metal that this wraps around a barrel and there's a little piece of metal and a screw that holds it down. But like I said, you got to get that really, really clean so it's nice and flat. If you put too much pressure, you can split the belt and then you have to order another one and wait 6 weeks for it to come from Europe. So when I did this, I got the two print heads here, and I also ordered a new roller. It's an ink roller. The other issues, well, you'll see in the video in a second. Because this wasn't sitting as flat as it could, it picked up a little bit too much ink, and so when I attempted to print, it printed, but it kind of left a lot of ink on the paper. So you'll see here in a second. So this is what it looked like after I tested it. It's printing again, right? I was happy. It's printing again after 20 years. This is thing, once the print head broke down, it was basically a paperweight or just something for an exhibit. You couldn't use it. And to be honest, I'm not really using it now because there's better solutions. But it does print now. You can see, you can read the characters. You can see a little bit of extra ink on the characters. So that's two things, maybe the head's, three things really. Maybe the head's not sitting perfectly flat on that barrel. Maybe there's a little bit too much ink being applied to the print head, or maybe the 3D printed print head is not exactly perfect. But I've seen other people who have replaced it and they got a little bit better results. So if you take your time and you clean everything and you make sure everything's sitting flat, you can get better results. I got a video here of this too, so you can. This one actually has sound, so you can hear it. I think. So you can see it printing. Not sure what this one line of text is. Maybe maybe some of the particles got stuck in there and got into the gears, and when it went to turn the print head, it just got misaligned. But you can see it printing. Like I said, it's really loud and really slow. You see the print head spinning, the ink's getting applied there somehow as they're both past the ink roller. But again, it's another piece of 35-year-old equipment that's kind of up and running again. I'm not going to do my resume on it, but it looks pretty good. What else do we have here? So Atari 400. Atari 400 came out in 1979-ish. When it came out, it had either 8 or 16K. A lot of software, both applications and games wouldn't run. If you had a disk drive, you pretty much couldn't run anything in 8K because the disk operating system would take up all that memory. Best Electronics had Atari old stock 48K boards for years. I mean, he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. About 2 years ago, we sold out. So one more product that you can't get anymore. So somebody, I don't remember exactly where I got this from. You can find it on the Atari website. Somebody engineered a new replacement board. Very simple. You take out the old board, you slide in the new board, you connect the cable. He even had a place to put external OSs. You could change the OS on the RAM board. So this board is an upgraded replacement to the Atari board that was new old stock. It lets you do a few more things, and it's available. You can upgrade. If you find an Atari 400 and it only has 8 or 16K, you can upgrade it and play the latest game or whatever. Ultimate. Power supply. So this is a big deal for Atari collectors. Over the 12, 13 years of the Atari computer lifespan, Atari had many different power supplies. Some were manufactured here in the US, Taiwan, China, once they moved manufacturing to Asia. So these are six or seven of the popular power supplies. So we got the white brick, these are hard to find, but this is a good power supply. Lower left here, you got the black brick, very reliable. This one here, the top right, came with the XIIIs. This is a really nice power supply, and you can actually buy these from Best Electronics if you need replacements. They have more than they can probably ever sell, to be honest. The bottom center is the mini box. This shipped with the XIII GS. It's got the logo on it. If you're running a BBS and you want a power supply that's not going to burn your house down when it's constantly running, this is a good one to get. And then this is also a very reliable one. But this one here, the one with the X on it, it's not an X, but you know what I mean. This one here, if you plug it into your Atari computers these days, there's a good chance that not only is the power supply going to burn up on you, there's a good chance it's going to burn up your equipment too. So you want to stay away from this power supply. It's actually called the ingot. It's nicknamed the ingot power supply, and you'll see why here on the next slide. It's shaped like an ingot, like a gold or copper ingot. So if you have these, it's recommended not to use them. Maybe take out your label maker. I wouldn't throw them away because it's history, right? You're throwing something away that you can't replace. But what you might want to do is take your label maker, put a label on it, say "Do not use," because when it goes, it's likely it's going to take your equipment with you. So stay away from this ingot power supply, and it's certainly not recommended for leaving it alone, because likely you'll come back and your house will be burned down. That's never any fun. It's going to take everything. So that's all I have in my slide deck. Anybody have any questions?
Sure. So going back to controllers, how about paddles?
So paddle controllers are,
As far as heat, because I think
if you're just talking about the electronics,
yeah.
you can get the potentiometers.
Yeah.
You can get them from Best Electronics. They actually have remanufactured newer ones with better tolerance, and they fit into the case. So you just buy that, and I think those are like the joysticks are just a slide-on connector. The paddles are actually soldered, so you just have to desolder the wires. If you have bad wires, like sometimes the dog will chew on the wires, or the kid will chew on the wire. You can get replacement connectors as well for that.
Okay.
From Best Electronics has them. There's another company in California called, what's it called? MyAtari?
MyAtari.com.
Yeah, MyAtari.com. So those two guys, Best and one guy's name is Brad, and the other guy's name is, I can't remember, but Bruce and Brad. So those two guys, like, they actually went to Atari warehouses when Atari was sold to the Tramiels. The Tramiels just got rid of. They just wanted to empty the warehouse, fire everybody, and empty out the warehouses because warehouses cost money, right? They just wanted to get rid of the product in the warehouse. These two guys bought up everything for pennies on the dollar, and one guy's in the warehouse, the other guy has a big garage up in the mountains, and they just have pallets and pallets and pallets of stuff. So you can get it. Best Electronics with paddles is probably better because he actually had new stuff manufactured to fit the paddle controllers, and we have good connectors on here. Well, who's else got a question about their Atari computers that we can get answered here?
What about disk drive maintenance?
So I purposely left that out. So disk drive maintenance, the disk drives are mass produced. They're 35, 40 years old. They never worked that great back in the 80s. There are better solutions. I do have working disk drives, but I tend not to use them. There's just better solutions for the Atari. You can get an SIO to PC cable, and you can use your Atari computer that's worth about $10 now, hooked up to a $500 laptop, and use that as a floppy drive. And you can have every piece of software ever made sitting on your laptop and have a perfect connection. It works every time. So there's that solution. You can get a cartridge that's been modified with a SD card. The SD card, 16 gigs, 64 gigs, 100 gigs, who knows? Every piece of software ever written can fit on that one SD card, and you can load it from a menu. It works every time. You don't have to worry about floppy drives. So if you have a floppy drive and you want to fix it, first of all, it's almost impossible to find floppy disks. Floppy disks rot, bit rot. I don't think anybody manufactures 5-quarter floppy disks anymore. I could be wrong. There are companies that buy up new old stock and reformat them and make them available to people who need them. But again, you're taking your chances with a 30, 40-year-old technology that's known to break down. Wasn't reliable back in the day. So if you really want to repair it, you can go to one of these companies, and they have, you can buy cartridges that are used to test the timing, or discs they use to test the timing. That's available. So Atari had internal products to test the timing on these drives. So you drop a cartridge in, it'll spin up the drive and tell you how the drive's working. You can adjust the speed with a screwdriver. Just like the cassette drives, you can replace the belts to get better timing. So you can do it. For me, it's not a good use of my time. There's just better solutions at this point, rather than trying to maintain a floppy drive that I can't get floppy disks for.
In one way, I just think you have what you were saying. I do have disks that I've kept in a nice cool dry place. I would want to try to get. Is there a better way to get the data off the disk, or try to find a working drive, get it all off quickly, and then move on from there?
So if you have your own floppy disk, like say you were the original programmer of Montezuma's Revenge, and you have these floppy disks that have the source code on it, and you wanted to get it off, yeah, so you could try to get it off with your floppy drive. So you could have the floppy drive as drive 1, the real hardware, and then you could have your laptop, either PC or Mac or Linux, whatever, as drive 2 and try to copy it that way. There's also another product out on the market called CryoFlux, which I don't know that much about, but it's a hardware solution. I think it comes out of the UK. It lets you. You should probably look at the CryoFlux.
Okay.
What it does is it's a hardware solution. You hook your drive to it. Actually, I don't even think you use. Do you use Atari drives with that, or
No,
you use
you
PC?
gotta use a PC drive.
Yeah, so you can use a new PC drive, newer, right?
Yeah.
So
when you drive, you read the disc.
it lets you read it at a very low level,
Uh,
and it so it's for it's called forensics of floppies,
in the jaw.
and that's how we make archival copies of everything. Even it'll even archive stuff that's highly copy protected.
Okay. What's that called?
CryoFlux, I believe. K CryoFlux. And Alan over here actually has one, so you can ask him later. Anybody else have any questions?
So what's in these power supplies that blow up?
So I'm not an electrical engineer, so there's transformers in there, capacitors. It's usually the capacitors that go, and if it's not engineered right or designed right, it can cause electrical pulses back into your hardware and fry your hardware. So depending on how much time and energy and quality products they put into the power supply, sometimes the power supply goes and it's self-contained where when it goes, nothing behind it goes, it's just a power supply. If it's poorly engineered, it doesn't have, say, a fuse or some other protection in there, that jolt will go back to the PC and fry the power supply circuitry inside the PC and all the chips, right? Because these are 35 years old, they're using chips that run on 5 volts, I guess, back then, and you jolt it with some kind of spike, it's going to fry those chips. And it's not always easy to replace the chips. So a lot of people, specifically with like the Atari 800 computers, sometimes or the 800 XL, when you get them, all the chips are hardwired into the board. So people take the chips and they'll solder them out, and then they'll put a what's it called? A socket in there, and then they'll socket the chips. So with that, there's a lot of products coming out for like memory upgrade. You can put a megabyte of memory in your Atari computer. I'm not sure why. There's no software that uses that, but you could do it, right? You put a megabyte of RAM into your Atari computer and use that for a RAM drive or whatever. So by putting sockets in your motherboard, it makes it easier to put these new gadgets in there. There's video upgrades to get perfect video, HDMI out, all those upgrades. Dual Pokey. The Pokey is the chip that controls the potentiometer, keyboard, sound, maybe random number generation. Atari had really good sound on it for games. There's a solution now where you can put 2 Pokies in, you can get stereo sound out of your Atari computer. So all these boards need a place to go. So if you put sockets in there, you can put it in easier. The problem with that dual Pokey is usually they don't make Pokies anymore, and Pokies got to come out of somewhere. So there were some games in the 80s, I think like maybe Ball Blazer from LucasArts. I think it had a Pokey chip inside the cartridge. The people are pulling the Pokies out and throwing the cartridge away just to get dual Pokey. Or they'll buy 2 Atari 800 XLs, pull the Pokey out, throw one of them away, get stereo sound. So you can get stereo sound out, but you're typically destroying something in the process to get that stereo sound. But to be honest, there was 5 million Atari computers made. There's hundreds of people collecting them. I'm sure there's plenty out there for a long time. Any other questions? Someone's got a question. Somebody. Nobody? All right. Thanks for coming to the presentation.